Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us here with this leadership series hosted by the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Keith, thank you for continuing to stay with us. Keith Robinson is the territory tax leader with PwC, and he's helping to give the general public a greater understanding on what the budget means for all of us. Now, Keith, some may say that there has been a lot of information floating in the public domain. This opportunity is a great one in that it gives us a clearer understanding of the measures that we need to take as it relates to the 2018 budget. And we've had the fortune of having a series of questions submitted by communications professionals, membership of PRATT, as well as the general public on what continues to be a very burning subject in the national domain. So the first question that has come in to our attention is about taxation. Now, is taxation our only option? Given that many may perceive the drive for diversification to have lost its traction?
Well, taxation is in most countries the major source of government revenue. I think the issue of the taxation arises because of the pressures on the oil and gas sector, on which we rely.
In our context?
Yeah, in our context, because we rely on that sector so much. What the diversification will do, it would spread the taxation collections across a number of sectors of the economy, rather than total or complete dependence on oil and gas only, so that the taxation and diversification actually works together.
Yes, and we speak about spreading the wealth as it relates to the budget oftentimes, but we also have to speak about spreading the burden of responsibility as well, which leads into our next question, which asked about the industries that would have been most affected by the 2018 budget, and that would be in a not so positive light, but as well as with the positive moving forward. What industries do you think hold the charge and hold the reins moving forward into 2018?
Well, one of the areas that we focused on, PwC, when we did our analysis of the national budget, was a segment that we called Who Won and Who Lost, in which we focused on those areas of the economy that got positive outcomes and those that didn't get such positive outcomes. So in terms of the positive, I'll start there first. We had the tourism sector, where there were some incentives that were existing already but were increased, and the introduction of new ones, a new one. There was also the agricultural sector that, got this new grant that would be granted to farmers, and also the expansion of the exemption from tax to acreages of all sizes, rather than what existed before, which was acreages of, I think, 100 acres. So that those were two of the sectors. The export sector, in its cry for foreign exchange, some attention has been paid to that as well, in the form of the capitalization, we might say, of the Exim Bank with some foreign currency. I think it's 100 million US dollars, where exporters can have access to foreign exchange in order to get their inputs that would lead to the exports that they make. All right, so they will generate further foreign currency by it. And perhaps another area would be the construction sector, where for the construction of dwelling houses, there is this $100,000 incentive that is being granted. So that those were some of the positive areas of the budget. When we think of what we call the biggest losers, we think of the general population, because we think of the removal of the fuel subsidy, we think of the increase in corporate taxation, we think of the removal of the incentives on the hybrid motor vehicles and the imposition of the tax on motor vehicles that were not previously in that range. We also think of the increase in the inspection fee. So a number of factors that impact the general population. Then we can think perhaps the banks as another area that has been affected by their corporate tax rate being increased to 35%. And another sector is probably the gaming sector, where the taxation has been increased in that area as well. And those are some of the winners and losers that we might consider coming out of Budget 2018.
Yes, and definitely you mentioned the gaming sector, and that has been, there's been viral conversations about the gaming sector in the wake of the release of the budget with Minister Imbert, and there's definitely been heightened conversations surrounding the gaming industry as a result of those measures that are in the process of being implemented. For many of us in the communications industry, we really did see the importance of media relations and communications relations, especially on a crisis level, when it came to the conversations coming out of the gaming industry, not being reactionary, but also ensuring that the public is informed and that they have the facts. In your view, what do you think are some easy tips and tricks that industries such as the gaming industry, maybe the agriculture industry, construction industry, what can they put in place from a communication standpoint to ensure that their message is clear, concise, to the point, and it sticks?
Well, I would think that if I zoom in particularly on the gaming sector, I think that if better communication or more communication in terms of their contribution, because it appears to maybe the man in the street that the sector only came alive in terms of making statements, etc., once the taxes were increased. But the sector may be making positive contributions, notwithstanding that it's in respect of gambling, but it may be making positive contributions in respect of employment creation, sponsorships of events, etc. So I think that is an opportunity for your communications people or your public relations people within that sector to have better manage the situation and perhaps to have been more proactive in communicating the contribution of that sector.
And we always speak about, making contributions and making valued and valuable contributions as communications and public relations professionals. And the big topic or the big subject that always sits well with communications professionals is return on investments. How can public relations professionals look at this post-budget conversation and say to their organization, what do we need to put into place to ensure that communications practitioners and the general public are cognizant of the way that they craft communications, the way that they craft communication plans to generate stakeholder awareness, stakeholder goodwill, and stakeholder sales, which is the bottom line of any organization?
In responding to that, I would say that companies need to communicate better what contributions they're making, so that you need really to find a way to get into the boardroom, because in times of economic recession or depression or whatever, you find that there are areas that will be targeted and would be low-hanging fruit in terms of where do we cut, so that it raises the issue of value for money. How do you connect your communications with that sales line that you're talking about? And how do you get that message over to those who are sitting in the boardroom, if you are not there, that your contribution is indeed a valuable contribution? It's not about waiting until something is done to the sector that you're in, or the company that you're in negatively, and then responding, but being proactive in letting the world know, letting Trinidad and Tobago know what are the corporate social responsibility things that this organization that I am the PR or communications person, what are those things that I'm doing for the community, so that the community becomes more engaged.
Yes, and I think engagement is important as well, because a lot of people feel left out of the decision-making process, especially for non-finance persons who don't have the opportunity to enter into boardrooms and sit down and have these pertinent conversations, and to be able to feel that they have their say in how things directly affects them. And that, for the most part, is a huge part of the population. So for a non-finance person or professional, can you explain to us how, in your view, the economy affects the daily medium-term decision-making processes of small businesses and small enterprises?
The economic crisis that we find ourselves in leads to, we can say, stricter management of expenditure, and which can lead to liquidity issues, probably financial performance issues, so that these small and medium micro enterprises need they are impacted when the economy goes into recession, as it has, because their cash is tied up, their sales are lower, they are not receiving their VAT refunds from the authorities in a timely manner, for example, so that the recession directly impacts such small companies that you're talking about.
Yes, and I definitely think that it's a challenge, and it almost feels as if it's a burden for all of us that we have to undertake. And I really do appreciate having this conversation at this very fundamental level, because it gives us a greater appreciation and a greater understanding for what it means to collectively come together and do what needs to get done in order for us to take that charge forward. So let's talk a little bit about communications best practice and impacting professionals. One of the questions that came in was in relation to the different forms of communication that we can use to ensure that the information remains palatable for the general public. What kind of financial writing, what kind of communication plan do you think really and truly engages a mass audience as a seasoned economist? And if that information falls short, in your view, how can we improve on that?
I think conversations like these are certainly perhaps the ways in which the writing should take a similar format, in the sense that we have this budget being read, and it flies over the head of a lot of people. A lot of people are not fully engaged for the 3 hours that the minister speaks, and therefore the writings that should follow should really be much more than regurgitating what the minister said, but rather breaking it down into a palatable form, so that the man in the street can understand what is the impact of the increase in fuel prices, or has there been, when will that be effective? Things like those need to be brought to the general public at a level that they can understand. Lots of times the communication, the writings in the newspapers, etc., tend to just carry exactly what the minister would have said. And on other occasions, we might have writers who are way above in their professional area capacity, and therefore they write at that level. But the man in the street picks up the newspaper the next day, and he's not any better off with the measures that have been taken and which will impact him.
Yes, and I think, you know, it's really about a coming together. It's really about the communications and the public relations practitioners banding together, both from the private and the public sector, and ensuring that the general public, the man around the street, their neighbor, their community, and on a national level, that we remain really informed. And again, I thank you so much for sitting down here today, having the conversation with us, breaking it down, ensuring that we understand the way forward and what needs to get done in order to ride the tide into 2018. Well, this has been a really fantastic, engaging conversation. It absolutely needed to be had. We're here speaking in the leadership series hosted by the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and we are speaking about the 2018 budget. Mr. Robinson, any final thoughts on what the way forward should be for citizens and corporations of Trinidad and Tobago?
In terms of final thoughts, I will just say that it's a situation of all hands on deck. We can't do business as usual, and as the theme of the budget was, we need to shift our paradigms. And on that note, I want to say thank you to the Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago for this opportunity, and to you for being an excellent host, and for all of the questions that came in from your membership and the wider public. So thank you very much.
Keith, I would like to thank you very much for your kind hospitality. PwC has been an incredible host to this conversation, and we hope that you will join us in 2018 for the mid-year review at that point in time, where we can look at how far we have come and how far again do we have to go as a community and as a nation. And of course, the general public and our membership as well can look forward to more installments of the PRATT Leadership Series, which will continue on as it relates to various aspects of public relations development in Trinidad and Tobago. Please follow us on Facebook at Public Relations Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And as an organization, we will continue to keep you engaged and keep you informed. Thank you.